Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
8:06 here on our fourth hour. Yeah, we do 4 hours every morning. We start at 5 a.m. If you miss any of it, why don't you subscribe to our podcast? You'll get that delivered to you, and you can catch up on everything you've missed. Now, coming up in 30 minutes, I don't want you to miss our conversation with Will Chamberlain, Senior Counsel at the Article 3 Project. He's doing a deep dive on all of the legal documents associated with the case of one Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You know, the Maryland man that Senator Chris Van Hollen is going to go to the mat for. You know, the guy who is in the country illegally, who has been associated with the MS-13 gang. In fact, 2 courts have determined that he is,
That's
in
right.
fact, an MS-13 gang member. He has a deportation order. He's been deported. And by
That's
the way,
called evidence.
Supreme Court never ordered him to be returned by the Trump administration. That was the word return is nowhere in sight in the Supreme Court order.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court order cannot order the federal government of the United States to take a citizen from a foreign country and bring him back into the United States.
That's called kidnapping.
Literally impossible. That is not, a court cannot do that and did not do that. In fact, the court went out of its way to say that the courts cannot get involved in the foreign policies and national security decisions and actions of the executive branch. But it's weird. It's like you never hear that reported anywhere.
Thank you for your excellent
and I mean
reporting.
Anywhere.
Thank you for your excellent reporting, Larry.
You're very welcome. Well, you know, I'm glad that I can perform the function of a newsman and journalist here as the opinion broadcaster on this morning program. And I want to make sure that all of our listeners know that we love you and we respect you and we respect your intelligence. Will Chamberlain will be coming up in 30 minutes to discuss the details of that story.
And basketball.
Right now, though, and basketball. No, it's not that Will Chamberlain. But now, I got to tell you what a happy day this is. You know, I go to sleep. I don't know about you, Julie. When you go to sleep, you know that alarm clock is so unforgiving in the morning. And you know that when you wake up, you have got to put together, with the incredible guidance and leadership of our executive producer, Heather Hunter, we have to put together a rundown to accommodate all of the news stories for 4 hours and make sure that our audience is informed and educated and enlightened and entertained. And it's like sometimes you get that stress when you're laying in bed saying, oh, my God, what are we going to talk about? What's this going to be? That? When I went to sleep last night, I slept the sleep of the angels last night. Because as I went to sleep, I checked my X feed, and I saw that Joe Biden had returned and delivered his first public remarks since he left the White House.
We're done.
And there you go. We got that.
There you go.
My work here is done. It's gold. And he did not miss a beat, man. This is classic Joe Biden.
Yep.
He delivered. Let's start at the very beginning of his speech. He's introduced. There's music playing, you know, to sort of cover up the fact that it's a small audience and a smattering of applause. So the music's playing. Go ahead and take a listen to this, because if you listen really hard, you will hear him beginning to deliver his speech while the music is still playing at full blast. Listen.
Thank you. So good to be We deserve help and pay for it.
If they didn't even try the slow fade, it was obvious. It's like, cut the music, cut the music. I want the only thing that would have made that better is that when you finally could hear Joe Biden's voice, I wanted him to say, and that's the most important thing I'll say in this speech, and I'm not going to say it again. All right, now let's move on.
So
all right, and so now we get into some really interesting stuff here. Now, first of all, let's start just to, give you the foundation here of what you need to remember about Joe Biden, because it's been a while. If we can go to cut 23 here, I want you to remember all of the things that Joe Biden has said about his history and his upbringing. To put it succinctly, he was born a poor black child. Listen.
I got raised in the black church. He knows I'm not kidding. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. I probably went to shul more than many of you did. You all think I'm kidding. He can tell you I'm I was sort of raised in the Puerto Rican community at home, politically.
All right, so there you go. He was black, he was Jewish, and he was Puerto Rican. But one thing you know is that he was down with the brothers. He was, in fact, he used to say,
kidding. He's not kidding.
No, he's not kidding. No joke. No joke. So yesterday, imagine our surprise when it turns out that it wasn't until he was about 10 years old that he actually saw his first black person. Because I was told he grew up in the black neighborhood and was raised in a black church. But no. He was 10 years old when he saw his first black person. But you see, actually, it wasn't a black person. Let's hear how Joe Biden described it.
And I'd never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time I was only going in fourth grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by.
I'm sorry, what now? Could you? They were what now on a bus?
What? We're gonna play that again.
And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by.
Oh, there they are. Yeah, that's not
nice.
Okay, no, that's.
Well, I mean, Larry, the media's really exploded this morning about this. Lots of criticism for Biden this morning because of that, right? No, never
really?
Mind. No. Mm-mm.
Oh, well, that's... Yeah. Isn't that kind of a racist term? And by the way, I literally, people always say, I'm old enough to remember. No. I really do remember. Like, as a child, can I just tell you, when I was like 4 years old, my gra-gra, my grandfather on my mother's side, immigrant from, I used to say, gra-gra, where are you from? He goes, some people say Ukraine, some say Poland, some say Russia. The border changed all the time. I don't know. But this was my Ashkenazi Jewish grandfather, my mother's father. The faith did not pass down because the faith passes down from the mother. And he married a shiksa. He married a French Catholic woman. So I was raised Catholic.
Ah, nice.
As was my mother. But I remember Graga was showing, he had just gotten off of a Pan Am flight. I had never been on an airplane before. Actually, forgive me, I was 5 years old, not 4 years old. And he had brought back this brochure of this beautiful Pan Am airplane and these pictures. And we were in Detroit, there were a lot of black people around Detroit. I literally did grow up with black people, not like Joe Biden, apparently. And my Gragra, this is post-Martin Luther King. This is post-Civil Rights March. This is, in the glorious 1970s, because I'm a Gen Xer. And he said, my Gragra said to me, this is a black person. He's pointing to a flight attendant in the brochure from Pan Am Airlines, says, this is a black person. Now, he said, Larry, we used to refer to them as colored people, but we don't say that anymore. That's wrong. So don't you ever, if you see do you have any black kids and friends in school? I said, yeah. Don't ever call them colored. Okay, so that was when I was 5.
Right.
Joe Biden was a senator at the time already from Delaware, but he was in his 30s. And now here's ex-president saying, can we hear it again from him yesterday in this speech?
Colored kids on a bus going by.
Okay, in Biden's defense, okay, it's okay now to say colored if you say persons of in front of the word. Okay, it's all very confusing. The woke always change the rules. Okay, so maybe maybe he meant to say persons of color. He because that's fine. POC is also the initials.
Now they do like to change the rules, but the only rule is what letter you have after your name, and that's a D.
Yes,
all right, yes. But we're just scratching the surface. There's more Biden gold, and God bless you, Gragra. I'm sorry, my Gragra was a champion of civil rights. And also connected to the Jewish mafia, I've learned afterwards in Detroit. That's a whole other story. We'll get to it another time, maybe in the podcast. It's 8:15. All right. Yesterday, on the 85th day of President Trump's second term, Joe Biden decided to emerge and deliver a speech where he was supposed to raise concerns about the dangers and threats to Social Security, which, by the way, sort of got lost in the fog of him bumbling, fumbling, muttering, barely audible. I mean, the one big takeaway here out of all of it, Julie, is that the damnable lie that the media fed us for years, that he was in some way capable of being president last time, let alone doing a second term.
And Larry, I wanted to interject and say, because this is radio, but if you missed it, I do suggest you all watch it on mute, doesn't matter, because he looks terrible. He looks thin. He looks frail. Oh. His skin is like paper. It is so depressing. Yeah. They need to let this man go to the beach and lay down, because it's just, he should not be on stage. It's cruel.
Well, no, I mean, the Biden family has lost all of their profit centers. They have.
He probably got paid for this. Yeah.
He's the only one that can make any money for them now. Yeah, so I'm sure he got quite a paycheck for this speech.
He looks terrible.
So, on his 85th day in office, Donald Trump's 85th day in office, Biden then reflected on what Trump has done in 100 days. So I don't know if Biden thinks that he started 15 days early. I mean, this is something that's pretty easily fact-checked, right? But here's Biden warning about what's happened in 100 days, even though he's only been president for 85 days.
Fewer than 100 days, this new administration has made done so much damage and so much destruction. It's kind of breathtaking.
Oh, he said fewer. Okay. Oh.
Well,
they've taken a hatchet to the Social Security Administration, pushing an additional 7,000 employees, 7,000 out the door in that time, including the most seasoned career officials. Now they're getting ready to push thousands more out the door.
All right, so let me just fact-check him a little bit here. The vast majority of people who have been dismissed from federal government, of course, as everyone here knows, have been probationary employees. Those are employees who have been hired for less than 100 days. If the most seasoned employees have left, it's because they've left on their own volition, because they took advantage of the early retirement offer that President Trump offered.
Generous.
By the way, a provision that I wish Senator Biden had taken 20 years ago. It would have been great if he did an early retirement, too. Although, actually, 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been early retirement. It would have been a timely retirement, because he was in his mid-60s.
Yeah, and don't forget, 20 years ago, people like Obama and Clinton and other Democrat politicians were talking about how government has become too bloated. We need to get rid of the waste and fraud and overlap and duplication. They were fine with this messaging. And now any cutting, getting rid of this fat is a hatchet.
Someone's actually doing it, yes, and he screams about it. He went on to make more lies about Social Security. Here's cut 26.
Already we can see the effects. For example, thousands of people use the Social Security website every single day to check on their benefits and submit their claims. But now, the technology division of Social Security Administration has been cut in half. And so the website's crashing. People can't sign on to their accounts. What do you think it does to that woman's living alone at 74 years checking, just not able to...
Yeah, the fear-mongering doesn't work anymore, Joe. I'm sorry. The political narrative
that teenager, 74-year-old woman.
Right. And exactly. It's that 74-year-old's grandson who's really helping him get on. You know that already, and they've already hacked their way around. But I got to say, kudos to Brett Baer, who actually cut into this speech. They did what MSNBC does to Trump all the time and fact-checked in real time. Listen to this version of it, cut 27 here.
Folks, imagine the panic that causes if you're a retiree living alone with only Social Security to depend upon. So now people are overwhelming the phone lines.
President Biden in Chicago talking about Social Security there, saying the administration has dismantled Social Security. They have gotten rid of a number of employees, thousands of them in the Social Security Administration. But in that interview with Elon Musk and his Doge team, they say they're going after waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security. And also President Trump has said that he will not touch benefits. In fact, Elon Musk pledging that benefits will be protected more by what they're doing. Obviously, Democrats and President Biden taking the opposite approach here and talking about the warnings, especially for those concerned about Social Security. These remarks, by the way,
He's being generous with the fact check there and says warnings. No, these aren't warnings. He's saying it as if it was fact. This is what's happening.
That's right.
People are distraught. They're dying in the streets. And it wouldn't be a Joe Biden speech if we didn't have Angry Joe. Angry, get off my lawn, I'm going to yell at you, Joe Biden showed up.
This is all they can do. This is all the Democrats can do. This is good governance. This is getting rid of the fat. This is really streamlining government, making it smaller, making it more efficient, making it work better. And all they have is panic, 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 panic. That's all they do to the American public.
Yeah.
It is so immoral.
But it doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore. But you're right, it is immoral, because if anybody is listening to this who isn't informed, who isn't listening to us or watching Bret Baier, maybe they will get scared. And these are older people who don't deserve that kind of fear-mongering. Here's Angry Joe, cut 27. Take us out, Angry Joe.
Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their standing, regardless of economic situation, regardless of who they are. Making sure that more than 60 million Americans who are living with disabilities are treated with dignity is who we are as Americans. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I really like being lectured to by the likes of Joe Biden about how everybody deserves dignity. Hey, Joe, who you been showering with lately, Joe? You tell me about how people deserve dignity.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Let's take a listen to Chris Van Hollen, cut 30 here, Michael. Chris Van Hollen defending the citizens of Maryland, his state.
A Maryland man who's the father of 3 in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
Yeah, of course, he's not referring to you, Maryland man, or me, Maryland man, or Matt Foldy, Maryland man, who, by the way, he sweats Old Bay. He's so Maryland. No. He's talking literally about an El Salvadoran citizen who entered the country illegally in 2012, was supposed to be deported in 2019, and then lied, I believe, to stay in the country. 2 different courts have found, or excuse me, I should say, to be specific, 2 different judges have found that there's credible evidence to say that he is a member of MS-13, a group that has now been determined to be a terrorist organization. He has been deported to the country of his origin, and Chris Van Hollen is referring to him as a Maryland man and a father of 3. And he's heading down to El Salvador. I don't know who's paying for his trip. I'd love to know if our tax dollars are going for it, but he's heading down to El Salvador now. You're getting a lot of misinformation, a lot of lazy reporting, a lot of deceptive, willfully deceptive reporting on this story. We want to get to the facts. Will Chamberlain, senior counsel at the Article 3 Project and Internet Accountability Project, has done that research. And, Will, I want to thank you for this. I have referred so many people to the research that you've done on it. And I got to ask you, you have the truth about this case. You have court documents that you have put on your X account. Was it hard to find? Is there any reason why anybody with a journalism degree or someone like me with just a high school degree can't do what you did?
Not at all. These documents are all publicly available on Pacer, and there's not even that much in terms of reading to do here. This is 30 pages of reading, maybe. I've seen many and much more complicated court cases that I've tried to cover in the past. This is an easy one.
So let's get to, the one thing that the media seems to get right is that he did enter the country illegally in 2012. That we know, and he even admitted that, by the way. Then they say that there is no evidence that he is a member of MS-13. Tell me, what have you seen with regard to that evidence?
Well, that's just clearly false, and we know that's false because in 2019, an immigration judge explained that there was a combination of testimony, of a gang worksheet, and of apparel that provided evidence that led her to find that he was a verified member of MS-13, and that finding was upheld on appeal. Now, we weren't in that hearing, and it's certainly not the standard of, a criminal trial where you would prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. This was a bond hearing, so the burden was actually on Abrego Garcia to prove that he was not a danger to the community. So, maybe he isn't a member of MS-13, but there's evidence of it for sure, and the people who are suggesting there's no evidence of it are lying.
Right, and if you're running a Department of Homeland Security with immigration policies and you're dealing with an illegal immigrant, you have to take a court's ruling on cases like this to execute your policy. All right, but that is due process that you just laid out. Let me ask you one other question, and I'll hand it over to Julie. But we're also hearing that he was allowed to stay in the country because he feared for his life from this 18th Street gang. Can you tell me, did he, the first time he was apprehended and brought in front of a judge, did he have that story immediately, or is it true that this was sort of a last-ditch effort? Finally, when he was about to face deportation, he said, wait a second, 18th Street gang is going to kill me.
I think what happened was, he applied for a bond saying that he was going to make an asylum application. So I think that there was some idea that they were going to come up with some story. Whether they had this all figured out at the time of the bond hearing is unclear. But I think the thing people need to understand is, if this story was real, he could have come to a port of entry. He could have brought it to the government. I mean, he had a whole year after crossing the border to make a claim for asylum. He didn't do that. He only claimed asylum after he was detained and very obviously about to be deported. And the other thing to understand is, at the time he was detained, he was about, his partner was pregnant with a child. And so, yes, obviously he wants to stay in the country given that, but then he's not a particularly credible witness, is he?
Right. Of course he's going to say things like that. Yeah. Go ahead, Jules.
It is really incredible to see how the Democrats are reacting to this, even planning a trip down there. Another victim of illegal immigration, Rachel Morin, who was killed by an illegal immigrant, her mom slammed Senator Chris Van Hollen, saying that he never called her family. He didn't give condolences, and there was no action, she said, in Maryland. This Rachel Morin was a Maryland resident, she said, and she was killed in Maryland. She said there was no action in Maryland. None of the senators did anything to help search for the murderer of my daughter. Can you comment on that, how disgusting it is to see the effort that they're putting into going down and figuring out what's going on with this guy, and yet they didn't care about the victims of illegal immigration?
Yeah, I'd be deeply offended if I was a Maryland resident. The idea, I saw Chris Van Hollen refer to Rodrigo Garcia as a constituent. He's not a constituent. He can't vote. He's not a citizen.
Right.
He never was able to vote. Right? He's not who pays your taxes. He's not who pays your salary. That's the tax-paying citizens of Maryland. And it's reasonable for Maryland citizens to expect that their senator will care more about them than he will an illegal alien who never had a right to be in the country and who made a mockery of our laws. And so I think it's absurd. The left seems to be in the thrall of the professional managerial class and unable to recognize that the American people voted for mass deportation and that they probably shouldn't be making illegal aliens the standard bearers of their movement.
That's right.
We're speaking with Will Chamberlain, Senior Counsel at the Article 3 Project and Internet Accountability Project. A couple of rapid-fire questions and answers here. First, I keep hearing that the Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to return this man. I don't logistically know how they could even do that, but is that true? Is that what the Supreme Court order said? Because I didn't even see the word return anywhere in the decision.
No, they ordered the government to facilitate his release from custody. That, in the context of immigration, means to eliminate any U.S. side obstacles to returning him to the country.
Okay, so but it's not incumbent on them to
go in and retrieve him.
Right. In fact, I don't even know mechanically how they would do that. Let me ask you one other thing. This has to do with due process. Everyone says, well, he should have due process. He should have due process. Based on your understanding of our immigration laws, was he denied due process here?
In some abstract sense, he should not have been removed to El Salvador until the withholding of removal was lifted. But this guy has had quite a bit of due process. Remember, he was detained back in 2019 and had had an immigration hearing, a bond hearing, an appeal. Like, this guy had way more due process than an illegal immigrant should have. He should have been deported 6 years ago, and that's the real scandal here. Now, I think, the government, the one point in which he's right is that, yes, until this withholding of removal was lifted, he shouldn't have been deported to El Salvador. But he could have literally been deported to any other country in the world. And if the Trump administration had just, gone to court and said, the circumstances in El Salvador had changed, it's a safe country, we can remove him there, he would have ended up back in El Salvador anyway. So as close to harmless error as you'll find.
And again, real fast, was he ever granted asylum? I mean, he claimed he would get murdered, but it was from a gang, not from the Salvadoran government. That would be a cause for asylum. But was he ever actually granted asylum?
No, and you're not even right there, Larry. He never could have gotten asylum because he didn't make an application within 1 year of entering the country. He was totally time barred from asylum.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was sort of making in terms of just you could claim political persecution from the government, but that's not what he got. And also, this gang that he said threatened his life, they don't exist anymore. Is that right?
They still exist, but most of them are in jail. El Salvador is now one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere. So, there's no basis on which to say that he fears this persecution, which means that because he never had legal status in the United States, he'd be going home to El Salvador. This story never ends with him coming back to Maryland. It never does, right? Even if, he manages to get back to the United States and go through the process, he'll just get deported again.
Low-hanging fruit question. Are you surprised how people in the media are not focusing on the facts of this case that we've just laid out? Or is it? I know that it's not surprising at this point. But good Lord, the lies, are they lazy, do you think? Or do you think that they're willfully misleading their viewers and their listeners?
They are. I mean, every reporting says Maryland man and protected legal status. And that's at a minimum deceptive, right? He's an illegal alien, and the quote-unquote protected legal status is not a right to reside in the United States. And so you see endlessly so many Democrat voters and really just normal people confused and assuming that this guy is just like a Maryland citizen who obviously has a right to be in the United States, who had asylum or something else. No, he never did. And I think the more people realize that, the more they realize, this is just yet another instance of the media lying.
Yet another.
Yep. And Democrats defending the indefensible. Will Chamberlain, great stuff. Really appreciate it. Loved your work with the Lakers, too. Scoring record, 100-point game, all that stuff. Really amazing.
I tried.
Doing great. Thank you. Well, it's 8:46. That's a wrap for today's show, but we'll be back tomorrow. Up next, it's Chris Plant. Christopher, you're looking good.